Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook. And this evening, we're in the second of two episodes in a conversation with Gary C. Smith here, talking about the concept of public speaking. But it goes beyond just the idea of a keynote address at some convention or a sermon from the pulpit or anything like that. We're getting right down to the nitty-gritty of public speaking one-on-one, not 101, one-on-one. So, Gary, welcome back to Reference Point. Pleasure to have you back.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
So, at the end of our last show, one of the things that we were just kind of getting into had to do with this sense of, I think the term we used was belonging, how people tend to kind of find themselves kind of getting into groups of like interests, whether it's being a 49ers fan or being a whatever. And you can communicate about that, but then you tend to block yourself off from other possibilities, I think is where we were going with that. So we get this fragmentation effect. And so let's kind of explore that a little bit more, and kind of I'd like you to take us a little further in that conversation.
Okay, glad to. It started showing up in the 50s, the alienated society. We went through that big age of the 60s and the 70s where people really started feeling isolated. We've got so much diversity in this particular country that it's tough to find your clan anymore. They don't exactly exist. The school systems are such anymore where you've got people who may not be your neighbors may not be going to the same school that you're going to.
That's true.
So that connection to those people is not happening. And so we've had incredible amounts of things for the last 50, 60 years of groups that have formed up. You can be, there's millions of people in the cowboy world right now who believe they're cowboys. There's the Society for Creative Anachronism has over 2 million people who think they're still living in the Middle Ages, and there's kings and queens. In order to create feeling that they belong. And the piece that's missing there is that we start thinking that we're separate. And I'd mentioned this earlier. When you start thinking of yourself as a noun, that you're just one thing there, your ability to connect is gone. You only connect to another person who is just like you. When you've gone to a broader vase, when you say, no, I'm a verb. I dance, I sing, I write. I have all these areas of interest that I can share. And I don't just share those interests, I'm curious about what your interests are too. And I ask questions.
That gets us into this sense of understanding, or understanding isn't the right term. Let me explain it this way. What I see a lot of times is people who will look for others that have exactly their point of view. And they will tend to feel comfortable in that space. But they would also tend to not even listen to someone else's point of view. And what's interesting and challenging and really devastating for me about that, with respect to just society as a whole, is no one point of view is 100% correct. And if it is 100% correct in one moment in time, it isn't 100% correct for all time. And so if you do not allow yourself the opportunity to explore other points of view, other thoughts, why did you think this? What is it that makes you believe, Fred, that that's the way things are? And why do you look at it from that perspective? What's so important to you about that? If you don't know these things, you don't allow yourself to be exposed to those things, there's no way to communicate with that other person. And so you actually block off an opportunity to belong, like you were saying. So we really belong to, what is it, a 7 billion person group, right? And yet we act as if we only have a group of maybe a dozen.
Right. And really, biologically speaking, not even biologically, psychologically speaking, the only thing difference between those other 699 billion people out there is our belief systems.
Right.
And as long as we have these belief systems that says I'm separate, or the big ego belief systems, I have to be right, I can't make a mistake, I already know this, I don't have to pay attention to you anymore. And the way you phrase that, I love the way that you phrase that, it just brings me back to the concept of education. Maybe we need to start with the education about how to listen before we ever start giving information on math or science or anything else like that. Learn how to connect with a person by making eye contact, being present with another person. Present's such a great word. It's not just this gift that we give at Christmas or on birthdays.
Right.
It's the gift that we give to an audience or to the other person that's there. People in senior citizen homes, they got one thing that's universal that they want. They want to be heard. If only the people knew that even though I may be dementia 10, I still want to be heard there. So maybe that's the point we need to start with education, is being able to learn how to listen for what's the intent behind this.
You know, you mentioned that, and I reflect on my career in sales. I've been in sales and marketing for more years than I'm going to admit to. But one of the things that I've come to learn, and I did for a period of time, virtually everything that I did was done remotely. We weren't flying across the country to sit down face-to-face with somebody. We were doing these things over the telephone. I was selling $100,000 software systems over the telephone. And what I very quickly began to learn is that you have to talk less and listen more. And it's hearing the things that aren't said, and hearing the silences that are as important, if not more important, to your ability to move that process, that sales process forward. And I think that isn't just related to sales. That's related to people talking to people.
Well, part of it too is we can both of us look at this from an age point of view. When you're a young person, how much do you really know? How much experience do you have to share? What are the skills that you're able to pass on to someone? Do you know how to teach those skills? So we've lost some of that respect. Some of the Eastern cultures have maintained that. There's a respect for the elders there. I have a friend that says, as us baby boomers moving, we should be moving into eldership. We should be moving into a place where we're talking values, we're practicing our values, we're walking our values, we're sharing that information, we're mentoring, we're looking at where, I'll try this word, we're looking at not just what we're bitching about, we're looking at what we can do to fix it. You know, we're taking the responsibility of seeing this is how things go together like that. So it's there.
It ties, in my mind, to a concept of apprenticeship, which I've looked at and seen in the various industry groups that I've had some affiliation with. Because the concept of apprenticeship is someone who does not have the full skill set associated with performance on a task, working with someone that does, so that they can learn from that person these various skills. And it could be physical skills, it could be mental skills, it could be communication skills. There's all kinds of different things that you can apprentice. But the concept of apprenticing seems to have gone away. A lot of kids seem to have an entitlement perspective, especially the millennials and the Gen Yers or whatever the right terminology is. There's an entitlement kind of a concept. I'm wonderful, I'm superlative, I should get out of college and go to work for $150,000 a year right out of the box, and nobody can tell me what to do because I'm perfect, okay? Which is something that is actually an unfortunate circumstance. And the problem with that is that when you get into the real world, it isn't that way. You're gonna end up, at least 99 times out of 100, you're gonna end up not at the top of the totem pole. You're gonna start in the mailroom and you're gonna work your way up. And you're gonna end up being either part of a team where you have to communicate with somebody else, or you're gonna end up being a team leader where you have to communicate to other people. And a lot of young people don't know how to do that at this point in time.
I think you opened up a big door there when you said you're talking about apprenticeships, because maybe college isn't for everybody. Maybe that education system, I read the other day where college will give you a job for 2 weeks and they find out you don't know anything and they fire you.
Interesting perspective. I hadn't heard of that one.
Right. So there's just so many other things to learn that if we're putting all our eggs in one basket and saying it's the public school or the private school system, it's the education system is what's going to pull this country out of whatever the economists are calling it right at this particular moment here, I think we've got the eggs all in one basket, and we're going to have a problem with that. They're going to get crashed. It's some more different places that we can work to get human beings to deal with what it really motivates them. Dan Pink's great book, Mastery, Mastery, Purpose, and I'm skipping the third one now, Authenticity. Those are what really motivates people. So if we can start dealing with that as a motivation, we can start dealing with what really is at the core of values. That if we want to change in society, if we want people to be able to communicate, they need to communicate from their values. They need to understand that compassion, understanding, truth.
You know what's so interesting about where we are in this conversation at the moment? When you start, we started our first episode just talking about public speaking. How'd you get into that arena of public speaking? And I think most people will have a kind of a perspective on public speaking that even I had at some point in time. You know, not so much today because I've had some life experiences that changed my perspective, but I think most people will look at it and say, well, hey, that's just something that you know, some people need to do. They have to do. I'm not the president of the company. I'm not to this. I'm not to that. So they look at this concept of public speaking as being divorced from the fundamental root of interpersonal communication and the things that you talked about earlier, beliefs and values, etc. But it's not divorced from that. Yeah. And if the viewing audience can grasp that concept, that they are one and the same, then I think that opens the door to being able to move forward and to start to embrace some of these things and to look for ways to figure out how you can do it better.
I agree. Totally agree. There's a small chain of stores that has opened in the Bay Area. I think they're all over the country. One of the great things about them is the clerks talk to you. They make a conversation. You're able to joke. You're able to have fun. At that particular moment, the world of serious has not got control. It's let go. You have some flexibility. You can connect to this person there. It makes a world of difference. And I think for some people, people who are a little older than we are, that might be the only place they're getting that connection there. And that's what keeps us alive, keeps us ticking, gives us the motivation to go on, to take a risk, to try something new. It's not just the money that's about there doing that. Right. It's that feeling that you actually have a purpose in life and you're fulfilling that purpose. There's a reason to be, you know. That's why when I talked earlier, I said asking yourself the really big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? How can I take control of my life? And stop feeling like maybe I'm a victim or that I have no choices or that this is just the way it is and it's always going to be that no matter what I do. I have no control.
That's a very scary step to take.
It is a scary step. It is, you know. But what I found in the last generation, when we grew up, there was no speech coach. There was no business coach, you know. There was the football coach, there was the basketball coach.
Right.
Now we have coaches. We have people who have dedicated themselves professionally to help people get through the challenges that the entrepreneur has in a business. What's the biggest challenge they have? It's them, right, sitting in their own very seat. Are they communicating well? Did they put a plan together? Not everybody's going to go to school and get an MBA. Not all those MBAs are going to be applicable to people who are doing things that we didn't even know could be done. Right. You know, I have a geek friend. He calls himself a geek guru. In college, he actually took one of those refrigerators that you'll find in a convenience store with a clear door on it there.
Oh, yeah.
He mounted a camera on it, did some fancy things with some drinks on the inside. So now when you walk up to that door, it says, "Hi, Gary, how are you? Are you going to have your regular today? Would you like a cup of green tea?" Nobody had ever thought of that. And that's how this world, that's where we keep going. We keep evolving in that way. And it's because of human connection, because of people asking questions, not believing like all the people or leaders we look back, they didn't believe that there was limits. They didn't believe that there was negativity, that there was something that was going to stop them. Nothing stopped Edison. Nothing stopped Mr. Colonel Sanders.
We hear a lot. I've spent a reasonable amount of time studying and reading about and exploring U.S. history at the time of the American Revolution. And they talk about how it was just a small percentage of the people that had the vision and forethought and moved the whole process forward. And so I think about that, and I think about the reality that, you know, we talked about there being 7+ billion people on the planet. There, in my mind, is no reason why every one of those 7 billion could not, should not, ought not be able to move forward, to release these challenges that we were talking about here, the belief systems, and kind of move beyond the limitations. Most limitations are self-imposed. I mean, even people that have limitations can do. You were telling me earlier in the evening about a couple of gentlemen who are bowling who don't have a thumb. If you go to any bowling alley and pick up a bowling ball, there's a place for the thumb to go, you know, and you're supposed to you're not supposed to be able to bowl without a thumb. All right, well, these couple of people that you said are doing very well have gotten past those limitations. You know,
Yeah.
it's just mind-boggling how we tend to allow ourselves to box ourselves in.
Yes. And do you want to wait to break through out of your own box until you have a major limitation, until you have major pain in your life? I think most people are not making changes without the pain. If
That's
you
true.
can get to a place where you start making pain, where you start
If it doesn't hurt enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't change that job until you're finally so sick of it all. You don't change that relationship till it's so painful. I spent years in the beauty industry because there's one place you can go to make change without pain.
Right.
Get your hair done.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, for me, that's an issue. But you know, what's interesting about that too, it's little things that you can make an adjustment on that can have a massive positive impact. I was in a conversation with someone just the other day about, and I actually wrote an article about this in a publication. It's easy for an executive, business executive, to see how little things cause major negative impacts on him or his business. And as a society, we can look at a couple of things that where little things created terrible impacts. There are a couple of shuttle accidents, space shuttle accidents. One where one piece of insulation foam had come off and the whole thing ended up blowing up. There was another one that they had a problem with an O-ring, you know, like a $5 piece of metal, you know, about 8 inches around, or whatever it was. And that thing failed and the whole thing blew up, right? So it's easy for us to look and say, little things that can go wrong can create a big negative impact. But it's hard for us to look at it and say, here's my life the way it is. Maybe it's not perfect. A little thing that you can change here today can have a huge positive impact. It's difficult for us to look at that. I don't know why it's difficult for people to look at that, but it seems to be difficult for people to look at. They grasp how the negative can have an impact, a little negative thing, but they're not willing to go and look at how the little positive thing can have an impact.
I got 2 things on that. One's called the news, and it's not very nice. It's not. And we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort dealing with the news.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of money is spent on the news. And the second thing is that when you talked about founding fathers, Mr. Jefferson's statement, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, got somehow translated in that you're supposed to chase happiness. It's something that you can't have. In his day, pursuit meant practice. Practice happiness. Now, you practice happiness when you put a smile on, when you put a smile on somebody else's face, when you tell a story, when you do those things that you like to do. Somebody had mentioned earlier here in the studio about those people who are trying to get money for this great project they have, and they haven't been home in 2 weeks, and they're working 24 hours a day to do this. I don't think they're practicing happiness. Right? And I don't think they're balancing their system out to give themselves the energy and the insights they need and the ability to communicate. You get somebody who hasn't slept for 144 hours and he's going to the bank and he's asking for a loan. They're going,
he's in trouble.
Nah, I think you need the money to stay at the Hotel 6 and
Right.
get a good night's sleep.
But that's interesting what you say about how the meanings of words can change over time. And, you know, that brings us back into this whole discussion of communication and the fact that it's more than just the words, because the words can be misinterpreted, okay? Right. And especially if they're just a written word.
The simple fillers, we call them in the speech business, the ums, the ers, the ahs, they're not even words. They totally destroy a person's credibility. And that's the easiest place you can actually start with that, is you can eliminate those things, take that little small step, join, get a buddy, get a partner, get a bell, and every time you say or you ring the bell, salivate like Mr. Pavlov said, and you can learn very quickly that there is a useful space there that's there for a reason. It's a reason that you can pick up what your next thought is, where you want to go to. Maintain your congruency. Maintain that idea where you want to go instead of putting those fillers in there and keeping people from getting the impact of what you're saying.
I think part of that is that the people don't understand, and they don't realize that the fillers are in there. They don't know that they're going, like, you know, it's just they don't realize it.
Yeah, it's mechanical.
Yes, mechanical. And when it's brought to your attention, you can do something about it.
Right.
You can't do something about which you have no knowledge.
Yeah.
Once you have knowledge about it, then you have the opportunity to impact it, make a change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, one of the biggest words that I've been working with lately is recognition. Until you recognize it, you can't change it. You have to see it, you have to hear it, you have to feel it. I mean, we have all those pieces in us as it is. I mean, not everything is visual in the world, not everything comes across auditory, not everything is feeling, but when we have the ability to access those parts of ourselves, I mean, I was a hypnosis major in college. We found, and it's been proven for years, people have ability to recall everything that's ever happened to them.
Right.
It's just a matter of accessing it. What's stopping it from accessing it? It's a radio station that may be going on all the time in somebody's head that's called KLAC. You're not good enough, you're not enough, you're not enough, period. And it's running all the time. And to take a moment to quiet that down, check in on who we are, where we are, how are we going for where we want to go, and what is it that we actually want. The golden rule is such a wonderful thing to think about it. It's incredibly selfish. It means you know how you want to be treated.
Right.
So why not use that as your prime motive as moving through life, knowing how you want to be treated, and then treat people in that fashion. It's a wonderful way to be. You know, it's entertaining, enjoyable, informative, and inspirational.
You would think it seems so simple, but that concept that you just expressed there is stated in many different ancient texts. It's in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's in more current times. We've had authors like James Allen and you name it. You mentioned was Horatio Alger. You know,
Right,
it's just dozens of people over centuries that have created or presented that perspective. You know, just kind of be outward looking. Recognize that if you engage with others in a manner that is consistent with what you would like to have in return, then you're going to have a net positive. If what you really want is to have someone beat you with a stick, well then okay, go ahead and do that to somebody else and you'll get it. But but that would seem a bit strange to me.
Yes. It seems humorous now because nobody's beating us with a stick, but I've never wanted to be beaten with a stick, and I don't think you have either.
No.
Yeah.
Even when I was in elementary school, and the nuns had a different perspective on that, but that's...
It wasn't a stick, it was a ruler.
That's
Dave.
true, it was a ruler.
My wife tells me these stories.
Well, we have a few minutes left, Gary, and that's all. So I wanted to turn the conversation over to you, just to ask you, are there any pearls of wisdom? Give me 3 things that the viewing audience should recognize, think about, ideally take action regarding in order to help them move forward in this direction of interpersonal communication.
Most houses and every bathroom that I've ever been in has a personal assistant for you. It's called a mirror. And it's a place where you can honestly take a look at yourself. And your physiology is telling a lot about what's going on the inside. The inside and the outside oftentimes reflect each other. So take a look at that. That's one of the first places you can go to. Recognize that you are not a noun, you're not one singular thing, you are multiple things. And I'll say Mark Twain's quote again, he met the enemy and it was him. However, he underestimated the numbers. There's a lot of you going on every day. Make an affirmation tonight before you go to bed and see who wakes up in the morning. They'll have nothing to do with that at all. And you can be happy. And every time that you are happy and you've created happiness in your life, you've created more happiness in the world. And it's a happy world that we're all really looking for and that we can have. We don't have to go through this constant warfare that we have and creating new diseases and strangest things in the world. People scared to actually start talking to each other and their thumbs are taking over there. So speak to each other, make a connection. The people at the stores want to talk to you.
That's true.
Right. Tell a joke.
Cool. So those are 3 great things. Look at yourself in the mirror, recognize that you are not just a singularity, and
practice happiness.
Practice happiness. So I'm going to ask you one question for you as we wind down with the last couple of minutes here. Why is it that you do what you do?
I love it, is the answer there. And I've been to 1,000 different seminars and I've taught 1,000 different times, and I've connected with people and walked out of that room and everybody felt good about who they were, what their purpose was, and what they were wanting to do. When they got back into life, they became different people again. So I do this because I want to make that difference. I want to help the people who want to help themselves get what it is they want, to be present enough to make the decisions they want to make. Not what they need to make, not what they have to make the decisions that they want to make. Because given that choice, people always make the right decision that encompasses everybody.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing that while it's true that most of the people who are there, when they leave, it doesn't resonate or it doesn't stick.
Yes.
Every now and again, there's that one. I remember reading something from Og Mandino that talked about why he does what he does. It's that one person out of the audience of thousands that gets it, that really can reinforce the reason that you do what you do.
Right.
So, well, very cool. Well, Gary, I really appreciate your being here and taking this time out of your day to come and speak with us at Reference Point. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've gained something out of this. Don't sit back and be afraid to start engaging and talking to people. You recognize that it's not just the words, it's how you say what you say, and it's how you look about yourself, how the look of you is when you're communicating what you're communicating, as well, as Gary has so eloquently told us today. So I really appreciate your being out there in the audience. I want to remind you again that if you have any questions for Gary or for any of the other previous guests here, or you have any concepts or thoughts or ideas of what we should do here at Reference Point, please send us an email at info@referencepointtv.com and we'll take action on those. So once again, Gary Smith, I want to thank you for being a guest here on Reference Point. You're doing fabulous work, and I really am excited about what you're doing, and all I can say is thank you, and I hope you and the viewing audience have enjoyed this discussion and have got something out of it too. And we'll see you next time on Reference Point.